What if I told you that across Canada, there are towns where life once thrived, families laughed, churches echoed with prayers, and children filled the streets, but now, silence rules. These ghost towns are not just abandoned, they are haunted by echoes of the past. From eerie shadows in forgotten churches to whispers in empty houses, each place hides chilling stories that refuse to die. Tonight, we step into Canada's most haunted ghost towns, where history and horror walk hand in hand. Dare to hear more haunted secrets? Hit subscribe now and join us as we uncover the shadows of the past. 1 Val-Jalbert, Quebec. Val-Jalbert in Quebec looks like a town frozen in time. More than a century ago, this place was alive with the sounds of workers, children, and families. It was built in 1901 as a company town for a large pulp mill near the roaring Waiachuan Falls. At its peak, the town had over 1,000 people. There were houses lined up neatly, a school full of children, a church, and even electric lights before most other towns in Quebec. Life seemed secure, but then everything changed. In 1927, the mill closed suddenly. Without work, families had no choice but to leave. One by one, doors were locked, windows boarded up, and wagons rolled out of town. By the 1940s, Val-Jalbert was silent. The laughter of children and the hum of machines were gone. All that remained were the empty houses, the broken windows, and the echo of the powerful waterfall nearby. Walking through Val-Jalbert today is like stepping into the past. Some houses are restored, but many remain abandoned, with doors half open as if someone might still step out. Visitors often say the air feels heavy, almost alive. Some claim they've heard footsteps on empty porches, whispers near the old schoolhouse, or shadows moving quickly through cracked windows. Tour guides themselves admit to strange chills and unexplained knocks in the quiet hours. At night, the town feels even more unsettling. The waterfall roars in the distance, and the darkness seems to press closer with every step. Travelers who stayed overnight have described waking to faint voices, like children calling out, or the sound of someone pacing in a room that should be empty. Others say they felt as though unseen eyes followed them from house to house. What makes Val-Jalbert especially haunting is how much of it remains. Inside the houses, you can still find furniture, tools, and even personal belongings left behind, as if the families planned to return but never did. The town feels alive with memory, as though the past refuses to let go. Whether or not ghosts truly linger here, Val-Jalbert carries an atmosphere that few forget. It is a place where history and mystery mix together, where silence hides voices from long ago. Those who visit often leave with the same feeling. That Val-Jalbert is not entirely empty, and that something, or someone, still walks its deserted streets. 2 Barkerville, British Columbia. Barkerville in British Columbia is one of the most legendary ghost towns in Canada, and also one of the most mysterious. It began during the Caribou Gold Rush of the 1860s, when people from all over the world came searching for fortune. At its height, Barkerville had thousands of residents, with hotels, saloons, theaters, shops, and even a newspaper. Life here was busy, noisy, and filled with hope, but as the gold began to run out, the town slowly declined. By the early 1900s, many buildings were abandoned, and Barkerville turned into a place frozen in time. Today, much of it has been restored as a heritage site, but the atmosphere of the past still clings to its wooden streets. Visitors who walk through Barkerville often feel more than just history. Some describe a strange sense of being watched, as though the ghosts of miners and townsfolk still wander the streets. There are countless stories of paranormal activity here. One of the most famous involves the Old Theatre. Actors and visitors have reported hearing footsteps on the stage long after everyone has left, and curtains moving as if touched by unseen hands. Sometimes, faint music is heard, even when the building is empty. The graveyards around Barkerville also add to its haunted reputation. Many miners died in accidents, from disease, or simply from the hard life of the frontier. Some were buried quickly, without family, without ceremony. People walking near the cemeteries have told of hearing whispers carried on the wind, or sudden chills that pass through them as if someone had brushed by. A few claim to have seen shadowy figures standing silently among the graves, vanishing when approached. Tour guides who work in Barkerville often speak of the same experiences repeating. Doors open and close when no one is near. Old lamps flicker even without power. One guide told of hearing the distinct sound of boots walking along the wooden sidewalks behind him, but when he turned, the street was completely empty. Another visitor described seeing the outline of a woman in old-fashioned dress in one of the hotel windows, though the room was locked and deserted. What makes Barkerville so powerful is how much of it still remains. Walking through the narrow wooden streets, with saloons and shops on either side, it is easy to imagine the life that once filled this place. But it is just as easy to imagine the spirits that may linger, tied to their hopes, struggles, and untimely deaths. The mix of lively history and ghostly silence gives Barkerville its chilling charm. Whether people believe in ghosts or not, few leave Barkerville without a feeling that the past is not gone. The town seems alive with memories that refuse to fade, and many say its ghosts will never truly leave the streets they once called home. 3. Eneox, British Columbia. Eneox in British Columbia is a ghost town swallowed by the forest and wrapped in silence. It was once a thriving mining and smelting community in the early 1900s, built deep in the wilderness near the Nass River. At its peak, it had over 3,000 residents, with homes, schools, a hospital, and even modern facilities that many cities did not have at the time. The smelter roared day and night, and life revolved around the industry. But when the Great Depression struck in the 1930s, the copper market collapsed. The company closed the smelter, and families had no choice but to leave. Within a few years, Eneox was deserted. Fires later swept through parts of the town, leaving behind only ruins, rusting machinery, and empty concrete shells. Today, reaching Eneox is difficult. The town is hidden by thick forest and steep mountains, and many of its remains are slowly being taken back by nature. Visitors who make the journey describe it as haunting. Empty buildings rise like broken teeth from the ground, and the silence of the place feels heavy, broken only by the wind or the call of distant birds. Rusting rail lines vanish into the earth, and the old smelter stands as a skeleton of its former self. People often say that walking through Eneox feels like entering another world, one where time has stopped but the ghosts of the past still remain. Strange stories have grown around this forgotten town. Explorers have reported hearing the faint clang of metal, as though workers are still at the smelter, even though the machines have been cold for nearly a century. Some have claimed to hear voices echoing across the ruins, words impossible to understand but clearly human. One visitor described the uneasy feeling of being followed, glancing back again and again, only to find the paths completely empty. Others speak of sudden cold winds that sweep through still air, as if something unseen has passed by. The tragedy of Eneox gives weight to these stories. Life in the town was hard, and accidents were common in the mines and smelter. Many men died from explosions, falls, or illness, and some believe their spirits never left. The isolation of the town makes the idea even more believable. With no nearby communities, it feels like the dead may still belong there, tied forever to the ruins. Standing among the crumbling walls and rusted structures, it is easy to imagine the sounds of industry, the shouts of workers, and the bustle of families. But instead, there is only silence, broken now and then by something you cannot explain. Eneox is not just abandoned, it is a place that seems alive with memory. Visitors often leave with the same thought, that they were not truly alone, and that the town's history still lingers in the shadows of its ruins. For Bankhead, Alberta, near Banff. Bankhead in Alberta is one of those ghost towns where history and mystery mix in a powerful way. It was built in 1903 by the Canadian Pacific Railway as a coal mining community just outside Banff. At first, it was full of life, with more than 1,000 residents. There were neat rows of houses, a school, a church, and even a hotel. The mine provided steady work, and the town grew quickly. But coal was not forever. By 1922, the mine closed after years of struggles, and just like that, Bankhead began to disappear. Families packed their belongings and left. Some of the houses were moved to Banff and Canmore, leaving the town hollow and broken. Today, only ruins remain, hidden among the trees of Banff National Park. Walking through Bankhead now feels like stepping into the past. You see crumbling foundations, pieces of machinery, and signs placed by the park telling what once stood there. Nature has swallowed much of it, but the ghost of the town is still present. Visitors often describe the place as strangely quiet, even though it is close to the busy town of Banff. The forest seems to hold on to the memory of those who lived and worked here, and many believe some of them never really left. There are stories of strange sounds and shadows among the ruins. Hikers say they have heard the echo of footsteps following them, though no one was there. Some feel sudden cold spots in the air, even on warm summer days. A few claim to have seen figures in old-fashioned miners' clothing standing near the ruins of the mine entrance, only to vanish when approached. Others speak of the uneasy feeling of being watched, as if the spirits of miners still linger where their lives were cut short. Mining was dangerous, and Bankhead saw its share of accidents. Some men died underground, and their stories add weight to the belief that ghosts remain. Tour guides who bring visitors to the site sometimes mention the sound of voices carried by the wind, or the slam of metal doors where no doors now exist. It is as though the mine still remembers the workers who gave their lives inside its tunnels. What makes Bankhead especially eerie is the way it lies hidden in such a beautiful place. Tourists come to Banff for the mountains, the lakes, and the fresh air, but deep in the forest sits this abandoned community, a reminder of how quickly life can change. Among the ruins, with trees growing through broken walls and rusted machines sinking into the ground, people feel a chill that has nothing to do with the mountain air. Bankhead may be empty, but it is not forgotten. Its spirit still lingers, waiting in the quiet shadows of Banff National Park. 5. Quetzalcoatl, British Columbia. Quetzalcoatl in British Columbia is a ghost town unlike most others in Canada. While many ghost towns are filled with crumbling ruins and broken buildings, Quetzalcoatl looks as if its people left only yesterday. Built in the late 1970s during a mining boom, the town was created for workers of a molybdenum mine. It had everything a modern community could want: houses, a shopping mall, a hospital, a swimming pool, even a movie theater. More than 1,000 people lived there, and life seemed full of promise. Then, in 1982, the price of molybdenum collapsed. The mine shut down almost overnight, and families were told to leave. Within months, the entire town was abandoned. What makes Quetzalcoatl so strange is how well it has been preserved. The houses are still standing, their windows unbroken, their curtains sometimes still hanging. Streetlights, playgrounds, and sidewalks remain as if waiting for life to return. Inside the buildings, furniture and equipment were left behind. Walking through the town feels unsettling because everything looks ready to be used, yet no one is there. It is often described as a place frozen in time. Visitors who have been allowed into Quetzalcoatl speak of the eerie silence that covers the streets. Unlike other ghost towns, there is no decay to distract from the emptiness. Instead, it feels as if the people simply vanished. Some say the town carries an energy that makes the hair on your neck stand up, a feeling that someone could step out of one of the houses at any moment. Explorers tell of hearing doors creak open when there was no wind, or the faint sound of footsteps echoing in empty hallways. Others describe the unsettling experience of hearing a telephone ring in an abandoned office, even though there has been no service there for decades. Because Quetzalcoatl was abandoned so suddenly, there is also a strong sense of loss. Families left behind personal belongings, toys, and even photographs. These traces of life make it easy to imagine the people who once lived here and the shock they must have felt when their future disappeared. Some visitors believe this sudden departure left a kind of spiritual scar on the place, an energy that lingers in every silent street and every locked building. Kitsault is now privately owned and not open to the public without permission, which adds to its mystery. Few people get to walk through its quiet neighborhoods, and those who do rarely forget it. The town feels too perfect, too alive, yet completely empty. It is the kind of place that reminds you how quickly life can change, and how easily a community can vanish. Kitsault is not just a ghost town of buildings, it is a ghost town of memories, frozen forever in silence. 6. Sandown, British Columbia. Sandown in British Columbia is often called the Queen City of the Ghost Towns. Hidden deep in the Selkirk Mountains, it was once one of the richest silver mining towns in Canada. In the 1890s, the streets of Sandown were alive with miners, shopkeepers, gamblers, and entertainers. At its peak, more than 5,000 people lived there. The town had saloons, hotels, a bank, a hospital, and even its own electric streetcar system, something unusual for a remote mountain community. But like many boomtowns, Sandown's glory was short-lived. When the silver market collapsed and a fire swept through in 1900, the decline began. By the 1950s, only a handful of residents remained, and the once bustling town became silent. Walking through Sandown today, you see the remains of a place that refused to disappear completely. Some buildings have been preserved, while others stand as hollow shells with sagging roofs and broken windows. Old rail cars sit rusting on tracks, and the mountain air carries an echo of what the town used to be. Visitors often describe the atmosphere as heavy, as though the past clings to every wall and shadow. It is a place where history feels alive, and some say the spirits of Sandown's former residents still wander its streets. There are many ghostly tales tied to Sandown. Travelers have reported seeing figures in old miners' clothing drifting between the ruins, only to vanish when approached. Some say they hear the sound of voices in the saloons that no longer serve drinks, or laughter echoing from buildings long empty. The cemetery nearby is also said to be haunted. On foggy nights, people have described strange lights moving among the gravestones, as though lanterns were being carried by miners who never left. Others speak of sudden cold winds and whispers that rise and fall with the mountain breeze. One of the most unsettling stories comes from visitors who stayed late in the evening. They describe hearing the faint creak of the old streetcar, as if it were still running down the tracks. Some claim to have heard the clang of the conductor's bell in the distance, even though the streetcars have not operated for nearly a century. These experiences make Sandown one of the most talked about haunted ghost towns in the province. What gives Sandown its unique presence is how much of it still stands. Unlike many ghost towns reduced to rubble, Sandown still has a few residents and a small museum. Yet even with signs of life, the overwhelming feeling is that of a place trapped in another time. Visitors walk its streets not only to see history, but also to feel the strange and unsettling energy that lingers there. Sandown is more than an abandoned mining town, it is a reminder that some places refuse to die, and that perhaps the spirits of the past still call it home. 7. Balaclava, Ontario. Balaclava in Ontario is one of the eeriest ghost towns in Canada, a place where silence seems to hold on to every broken board and empty window. The town was founded in the 1850s and quickly grew around a busy sawmill that cut lumber for the surrounding region. At its peak, Balaclava had homes, a hotel, a general store, a blacksmith, and of course, the mill itself, which sat on the water and powered much of the town's life. For a while, the community thrived, but as time passed the forest around Balaclava was stripped of timber, and the sawmill eventually closed. With no work to keep families there, people began to leave. By the mid-20th century, Balaclava was little more than a shadow of its former self, and soon it was completely abandoned. Today, the remains of Balaclava are haunting to see. The mill still stands, though decayed and leaning, its broken windows staring out like empty eyes. The old general store and a handful of houses remain, their paint peeling, their doors hanging loosely on rusted hinges. Walking through the streets, many visitors say they feel as though the town is still watching them, as if the spirits of those who once lived here are not ready to let go. The still water near the mill reflects the ruins like a mirror, adding to the unsettling mood. Stories of strange happenings are often shared by explorers who venture into Balaclava. Some claim to have heard the creaking of machinery in the mill, even though the wheels have not turned in decades. Others say they have felt sudden drops in temperature, as if someone invisible passed by them. A few have reported the sound of footsteps echoing on the wooden floors of the abandoned store, though the buildings were empty. Shadows have also been seen slipping through broken windows or moving across the walls, vanishing as quickly as they appear. Local legend suggests that workers who lost their lives in accidents at the mill may still remain, their spirits tied to the place where they labored. The sawmill was dangerous, and stories tell of men injured or killed by the giant blades and heavy logs. Some believe their restless souls still haunt the ruins, replaying the moments of their final days. The idea is made stronger by the way the mill still looms over the water, dark and silent but strangely alive with presence. Balaclava is not just an abandoned town, it is a place that feels frozen between past and present. The buildings stand as if they could welcome life again, but instead they sit empty, crumbling slowly into the earth. Visitors leave with an impression that is hard to shake, that Balaclava is not truly empty, and that the town itself is still alive in spirit. It remains one of the most unsettling ghost towns in Ontario, a reminder of both industry and loss, and of how some places never fully let go of their past. 8. Robsart, Saskatchewan. Robsart in Saskatchewan is a ghost town that tells the story of both hope and heartbreak. It was founded in the early 1910s, when the railway brought settlers and farmers to the prairies. For a time, it was a thriving community with shops, a hospital, churches, and even its own newspaper. The streets were busy, children filled the school, and families believed the town had a strong future. But farming on the prairies was never easy. Droughts, falling grain prices, and the Great Depression hit Robsart hard. People began leaving in search of better opportunities, and by the mid-20th century, the town was nearly empty. Today, only a handful of buildings remain standing, their wooden walls warped and windows broken, a sad reminder of what once was. Walking through Robsart now is a haunting experience. The old hospital still stands, its windows dark and its hallways silent. Explorers who step inside describe the feeling of being watched, as if the patients and doctors of long ago still linger there. Some say they have heard faint footsteps in the corridors or whispers drifting through the empty rooms. One visitor reported the sound of a door slamming shut on its own, even though no one else was inside. The hospital, more than any other building in Robsart, carries the weight of its past and is often at the center of ghost stories tied to the town. The remains of other buildings add to the eerie atmosphere. Houses sit with collapsed roofs, stores are filled with dust and broken glass, and the once busy main street is silent except for the sound of wind sweeping across the prairies. At night, the emptiness feels even heavier. Travelers who have camped near the ruins tell of distant voices carried on the wind, or the sudden feeling of not being alone. Some describe seeing figures moving across the fields, only to vanish when they looked again. Life in Robsart was filled with struggles, and many believe that is why the town feels unsettled. Families who lost everything in the Depression, patients who died in the hospital, and the dreams that were broken all seem to have left a mark. The sense of sadness that clings to Robsart is part of what makes it so chilling. Unlike some ghost towns that are romanticized for their history, Robsart feels raw, as though the pain of its decline is still alive. Today, Robsart is visited by ghost town explorers, photographers, and those curious about the paranormal. They come to see what remains, but many leave with more than photographs. They carry the memory of a place that feels frozen in its final days, where silence hides whispers of the past. Robsart is not just a forgotten town, it is a reminder of dreams that died too soon, and perhaps of spirits that still walk the lonely streets, unwilling to let go. 9. Dorothy, Alberta. Dorothy in Alberta is a ghost town that seems to rest quietly in the wide, open prairies, but its silence hides an atmosphere that unsettles those who visit. Founded in the early 1900s, Dorothy began as a small farming community along the Canadian Badlands. Families settled here, building homes, schools, and even two churches that still stand today. Life in Dorothy was simple but harsh. The land was difficult to farm, and the isolation of the prairies often left people struggling against loneliness and loss. Over time, as farming declined and families moved away, the town emptied out. By the 1980s, Dorothy was more or less abandoned, leaving behind weathered wooden houses, fading churches, and an air of sadness that still hangs over the place. The site of Dorothy today is haunting. The two old churches remain as if frozen in time, their steeples pointing to the sky, but their walls worn and peeling. Inside, pews gather dust and windows let in thin rays of light, casting long shadows across the floor. Visitors who have stepped inside the churches describe feeling sudden chills, as though the air around them had grown heavier. Some say they have heard faint voices, hymns sung by a congregation that no longer exists. Others claim to have seen shadowy figures standing near the altar or sitting quietly in the pews, watching silently before fading away. The houses and farm buildings left behind are no less unsettling. Many are collapsing under the weight of years, their roofs caved in, their doors swinging on rusty hinges. Explorers who enter often talk about an overwhelming silence, broken only by the sound of the wind through broken boards. A few have reported hearing footsteps in the empty hallways or the sound of doors creaking shut when no one else was nearby. One visitor claimed that while walking through a farmhouse, they felt as though someone brushed past them, though the building was completely empty. The location of Dorothy in the Badlands adds to its ghostly presence. The barren, rolling hills stretch endlessly, and at night the sky above feels vast and endless, filled with stars. Against this backdrop, the ruins of Dorothy seem small yet powerful, like a reminder of lives once lived here. Some say that the isolation amplifies the haunting energy, making even the smallest sound feel alive. For many who visit, Dorothy is more than just a ghost town, it feels like a place that remembers. The laughter of children who once ran through its fields, the prayers spoken in its churches, and the hardships of families who worked the land seem to echo in the air. It is a place where history lingers in a way that feels both sad and supernatural. Dorothy remains one of Alberta's most quietly chilling ghost towns, a place where the past refuses to fade away. 10 Birchall Lake, Ontario. Birchall Lake in Ontario is a ghost town that still feels strangely alive, even though it has been abandoned for decades. It was built in the 1950s as a thriving mining town, created to support the Birchall Lake mine. At its peak, more than 400 people lived here. The town had homes, a school, a recreation center, and even a store. Families built lives here, and for a short time, it seemed like Birchall Lake would grow into a permanent community. But when the copper mine closed in 1982, everything changed. Almost overnight, the people were gone, and the town was left frozen in time. Walking through Birchall Lake today is an eerie experience. Unlike many ghost towns where only ruins remain, here entire houses are still standing. Curtains hang in the windows, furniture is still inside, and in some homes, plates and cups are left on the tables as if the families had just stepped out. It feels as though life simply stopped one day and never started again. Explorers who visit often say it is unsettling to see personal belongings scattered across empty homes, almost as if the owners might return at any moment. The silence of Birchall Lake is heavy. When the wind moves through the empty streets, it carries an almost ghostly sound. Visitors have reported strange experiences while exploring the houses. Some describe hearing the faint sound of children playing, though the school has been empty for over 40 years. Others claim to have felt cold spots inside certain buildings, even on warm summer days. A few explorers have said they saw figures in the windows of houses, only to find the rooms completely empty when they entered. The isolation of Birchall Lake makes it even more haunting. Surrounded by forest and water, the town feels cut off from the world. At night, the darkness is absolute, with only the sound of nature in the background. Several visitors have told stories of hearing footsteps on gravel roads when no one else was around. Some believe the spirits of miners who once worked here still linger, unwilling to leave the place that gave them purpose. Others think the town's sudden abandonment left an energy behind, as if Birchall Lake itself remembers the lives that filled it. For ghost town explorers, Birchall Lake is one of the most powerful places in Ontario. Unlike towns that crumble into ruins, it remains preserved, almost like a snapshot of the past. That is what makes it so unsettling. The furniture, the toys, the schoolbooks. All of it remains as a reminder that life here ended too soon. To walk through Birchall Lake is to step into a place where time stopped, and where silence holds secrets that may never be explained.